Hey there, thanks for joining us on the Chief Executive Aviator. I'm Simon Turner, your host, and you're wondering what we're all about. Well, we're pilots who happen to run businesses, or maybe we're business people who happen to fly. Either way, we've figured out that flying gives us a serious edge. Every week, I sit down with another pilot entrepreneur or executive who's discovered that their plane isn't just some cool ride, it's actually a secret weapon for growing their business. We're talking real stories about landing deals and actual landings, expanding markets, and yes, still making it home in time for dinner. Whether you're already flying for business or you're just dreaming about it, you're going to hear some pretty amazing stories about how aviation changes the trajectory of lives and businesses every day. So get your pre-flight done. We've got a great conversation headed your way. Big welcome to John Zimmerman, CEO of Sporties. He's an ATP-rated pilot, host of the amazing podcast Pilot's Discretion, which I'm sure all of you listen to as well. Great to have you here, John, and I'm really looking forward to getting to learning from you and hearing all about your history and how you ended up where you are.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Well, first, I'm going to hit you right between the eyes. How has flying helped the way you lead Sporties? Are there any kind of cockpit lessons that translate directly into business decision-making in your business?
There's a bunch. I mean, this is a topic I think about a lot. I think flying is very much a mental game, and so I think there's many habits about being a pilot that translate well to business. I mean, one is the classic aviate, navigate, communicate. You know, you've got to fly the airplane first, and I think the analogy there in business is don't get caught in that analysis paralysis. You know, you've got to run the business. You've got to talk to your customers. You've got to be out there doing it every day. And I sometimes see people make the mistake of waiting until they have 100% perfect information. And oftentimes the best plan is to get about 75% and go. Take your best shot. And that's really aviation, right? We like to be conservative, but it's rare that you know with 100% certainty this is absolutely the right way. You know, if we're deviating around weather en route, it's going to be, well, the Datalink weather says this, and my forecast before takeoff says this, and the view out the window says this. So my gut feel is we're going to go right and miss that ugly cloud. That's kind of how business works to a large extent too.
Couldn't agree more. Well, it's great to have you here, and like I said, I'm excited to learn from you, and I'm sure a bunch of the audience will learn a lot from you as well. Most of the audience will probably know Sporties because we all started somewhere, and we all probably learned from a Sporties, a private PPL pack, or from some of the shopping that we've probably all done on your website. But maybe give us a bit of a high level about who you are and what you do, and you've got a really exciting story of how you kind of got to where you are to running Sporties. So perhaps just a short background there would be awesome.
Sure. I've been here 26 years and am the CEO now, and that was never really my plan. I think like most business people, the plan, if you had asked them at age 17, is not the plan as it played out, but all for the better in my case. I grew up around airplanes and learned to fly in high school, and so I was just an aviation geek most of my life. And worked at Sporties, honestly, in college in the summers. My first job here was pumping gas at the FBO just because I wanted to be around airplanes. I did an internship with a congressman, and I decided, well, that's definitely not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to work in politics the rest of my life. Maybe I'll go get a job at the airport. And so I really did it just to hang around airplanes and meet pilots. But I realized after a couple of summers of doing that actually this aviation industry is a really great place. And so I took the job full-time out of college with Sporties and got to work in all kinds of different departments. I got to learn some basic website design and programming, working in our web department. This is in very early 2000s when that was kind of a new and different thing. Got to work on our product development team and our marketing team. So it ended up just being a terrific on-the-job training setup. I learned more in a couple of years working here than I could have learned in 10 years in business school. And after about 5 or 6 years, I realized, maybe actually this is the job. Maybe I'm not going to do this as training to go get that quote unquote real job. Maybe actually this is a great business. This is a great group of people. It's a fun industry, a lot of opportunities for growth. And so essentially I've just never left. And so I get to go to work on the airport every day here at Sporties and work with great people and talk to pilots. And it's an absolute dream come true.
How amazing. You do fly quite a lot for business, from what I understand. You fly everything from the Citabria to the PC-12. Take me through a typical kind of flight that you would make for business purposes and why you would take that and what you would fly. You're probably not flying the Citabria to a business meeting, or at least most of them.
You never know. We like to have fun at Sporty's, and so between the airplanes we have 23 airplanes in our flight school, so there's always an airplane somewhere, and we love to mix it up. So, if we're going to a business meeting and it's 500, 800 miles away, we'll hop in the Pilatus and we'll go make a day trip out of what would take 2 or 3 days on the airlines. Visit with a lot of aviation companies and customers who are not close to an airline airport, so it's just perfect to go right to a GA airport. But we also fly Piston, fly Cirrus, Cessna 182. We have a 182 here at Sporty's that is just for employee flying, where any licensed pilot who's a full-time employee here at Sporty's can fly it absolutely free. And so we'll take that on some business trips when the weather cooperates. And again, it's a very efficient way to get around. It's a great way to conduct business face-to-face, which I'm a huge believer in, even more so after COVID, not less so. Now, for us in our industry, it's also just a great way to stay in touch with our customers. We can be flying along in a Cessna 182, and we'll have a great product idea. We'll say, hey, we need a knee board for an iPad that works better than this, or we need a radio that I can do this with. So it's a tremendous product development laboratory for us. But even if you're not in the aviation business, I just think it's a tremendous tool for staying in touch with your key customers and partners, and you just cannot overstate the value of that face-to-face contact. That's where great ideas, great partnerships come from.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never thought about it, but you really have to dog food your product when you fly everywhere and use all your products and figure out what maybe breaks or what doesn't work as well. It's but I hadn't thought about that angle, but that's truly amazing.
There's no better way. Pretty much everybody I work with is a pilot, so flying's part of the job. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's not an airline pilot, so if the weather's horrible today, we don't really have to go, but it is an important part of the job.
Absolutely. What's the most recent product that you've kind of discovered during a flight that you either should make or make better, or maybe should investigate?
Yeah, great question. A whole bunch. I mean, iPad mounts and knee boards and charging cables and battery packs, all those accessories, they're not as exciting as a brand new A&R headset, but they're really, really important. Most of us, our iPad is an absolutely no-go item. And so coming up with the perfect battery pack that's safe in the cockpit, doesn't interfere, has the right features, that's important. We've been doing some testing on some radios recently, and that's one where you can put it on a bench, you can run the numbers, but the only real test is to get up in the air and use it the way our customers will. And so we do an awful lot of that.
That's amazing. You also do a lot of pilot education. What do you feel is kind of missing in flight training today and just general education in aviation? Like, if you could redesign the system from scratch, what do you think it would look like?
Yeah, a lot. We could probably talk all day about that. I think most schools do a good job. It's easy. A lot of people like to beat up on young flight instructors building time for an airline career. I think many of them are excellent flight instructors, and they get a bad rap. But some of it's the incentives, and the incentives with the knowledge test, the check ride, the ACS. It's very hard to be efficient in delivering flight training and not teach to the test in some form. I could make the world's greatest private pilot with 180 hours of training, but no one would come to my flight school because that's going to be too much time and too much expense. I would personally like to see a little more emphasis on the application of the skills. We do tend to sometimes get focused on the maneuvers and the checklists, which are important. But as I said, flying's a mental game. So a lot of it's about decision making. A lot of it's about applying things to different situations. One of the fun parts about flying is that every flight's different. So if you just learn it by rote and you can only do it at your home airport when the weather is good, you can't then go apply it to a different airport when the weather's different in a different part of the country where the controller has a different accent. There's just all these things that can change. So I think there's an application level there that sometimes gets glossed over. And I particularly see this with avionics. One of my pet peeves is this old barstool debate about, is it better to be a stick and rudder pilot or a modern technological pilot? And my answer is always, why not both? We can do both. And I see either pilots who are autopilot and avionics dependent and can't fly when something goes wrong. That's clearly bad. But I also see the other way. I see pilots who have 250 hours and an instrument rating and have no idea how to use a GPS beyond Direct 2 and have no idea how to use an autopilot. And both of those things are not luxuries. In 2025, a good autopilot and a good WASP GPS are absolutely safety tools if you know how to use them. And I sometimes see those really get glossed over. It's like, well, let's learn how to shoot an LPV approach. You'll pass the check ride, and off you go.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to learn about how to really use modern avionics.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just made an acquisition that has an amazing amount of content on avionics. I've used the pretty basic books that you buy from pilot workshops, and that taught me the 750, the Garmin 750 XI in and out that my instructor didn't even know half the stuff that was in there. And do you see a future where you can kind of do a lot more interactive training and that sort of thing around avionics?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a key part of why we love the Pilot Workshops team and why we wanted to partner with them more. Our focus at Sporty's has traditionally been a lot on the primary, what we kind of call check ride courses, private instrument, commercial, even multi-engine, G1000, tailwheel. These are kind of checkout things. They're one-time events. And what Pilot Workshops focuses on so well is proficiency, which is not a check ride event. Proficiency is always and forever ongoing. There is no end point. No matter how many hours you have, you need to work every month to stay proficient. And that's really their approach of learning the avionics. Forget the ACS, forget the check ride. Let's actually learn how to use them. Let's stay current with those procedures. So that's really what we're focused on. We feel like Pilot Workshops completes our training catalog. Now we can go from no experience all the way up through maintaining proficiency. And we have lots and lots of plans in the years ahead to really integrate Pilot Workshops training and the Sporty's training to really make it a seamless process. So you can learn with Sporty's, you can add ratings with Sporty's, and you can stay current and proficient with Pilot Workshops. And we'll be taking advantage of some of the technology we have in our learning management system and our mobile apps and all that kind of stuff. So there'll be a lot of fun stuff coming in the years ahead.
Brilliant. Excited to see that. Now, you also create a lot of content. I think you're about to pass 100 episodes of Pilot's Discretion, which is one of my regulars. I just listened to a new episode, which has been great. What inspired you to start Pilot's Discretion, and how do you select the topics and the guests that you bring on?
Yeah, great question. We kind of held off on doing a podcast for years. Obviously, they've been around a long time. And we didn't want to do one just to be a Me Too. And so we were waiting around to find what was an unserved niche there. And we decided after a few years that there are lots of people doing really good news podcasts. There are lots of people doing accident analysis podcasts. And what we really wanted to do was show off the people of aviation. We just think aviation is a phenomenal industry filled with interesting, diverse people from all walks of life with all kinds of different experiences and passions. And aviation is often the only connective piece there. And so I really wanted to show off that personality. So that's been... I'm going to try to walk the walk here. We didn't have a carefully crafted 100 episode plan. We decided to do a few and iterate and see how it went. And we were successful pretty soon out of the gate with it. And I've always tried to keep it, it's like writing. The old advice, write something you would want to read. I've always tried to make a podcast that's something I would want to listen to. And for me, that's variety. That's a variety of people. We have, young pilots, old pilots. We have 30,000-hour ATPs. We have 10-hour student pilots. And I always try to ask a variety of questions. Go beyond just, hey, what do you fly? But try to understand that whole person, because most pilots, when you talk to them for more than about 10 minutes, they're almost all really interesting people, and they have some interesting hobby or life experience. And you start talking to them, well, I didn't know that about you. I thought you were just a Delta captain with 20,000 hours, but actually that may not be the most interesting part of your life. And so for me, that's always been the really fun part. I enjoy that so much. But B, that's always been kind of the niche we try to fill, is really go deep on people, go beneath the surface a little bit, and just show off the fascinating variety of people that are in aviation. Okay,
I completely agree. I mean, even doing this podcast for a very short period of time, the amount of amazing people that I've met that you would have never known under the skin of them being a pilot. They're very successful business people, and they've got amazing stories and families and that sort of thing. So I can imagine you're about 100 you're about 90 episodes ahead of where I am, but you've met probably some amazing people, and I've really enjoyed personally listening to their stories. And I think you do a great job of, if you ever give up being the CEO, you could probably be a great radio host, or you have a perfect voice for it. But given that you are still a CEO, how do you balance being a pilot, staying proficient, being an executive of a very successful and complex company, and also creating enough content, for the podcast?
I view them as related. So to me, they're all part of the same job.
Yep.
Running a business is not about spreadsheets and reports. I mean, sure, you've got to do that. You got to spend your time in Excel, but you really do need to stay close to the customer. And for me, talking to other pilots, that sort of forces me to learn about new parts of the aviation industry. So, if I'm researching for an episode coming up, I might be learning about electric airplanes, one day, and vintage tail draggers the next, or I might be learning about new avionics, or I might be learning about aviation history. So it forces me to learn more about our industry and the people in it. And then flying, as I mentioned, that's just a great way to keep me grounded in the business. That I think it's easy as a senior executive, you can work on the business too much and forget to work in the business. And so for me, flying is a way to work in the business, is to remember, A, why we do this, but B, what are the challenges and pain points our customers face? How can we make flying better? Because it sounds corny, but that's really what we're about. We're none of us here at Sporty's, and I think most people in aviation, we're not in it because we did some lifetime analysis and decided we'd make 19% more lifetime earnings because of it. We do it because we love it. It's a fun industry. It's a great group of people, and so at a basic level, we want to make flying, we always say, safer, easier, and more fun. And we feel like if we do that, the financial rewards will be there, because if more people fly and they do it safer and they have more fun and they tell their friends about it, it's just good for everybody. So I know that sounds cliche, but I think it's easy to overlook how important that is when you're, like I said, when you're buried in spreadsheets. It's like, why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because flying's great and we want more people to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, in that same vein, Sporties is loved by so many pilots, myself included. It's a highly successful business, and it's obviously very product, customer, passion kind of driven. How do you sort of balance making sure the business is still really competitive, because it's a competitive kind of market, but making sure that you're sticking to your safety values, sticking to your product and customer values, that sort of thing? How do you guys sort of balance that?
Yeah, it's an ongoing struggle, right? And we're certainly never perfect, but I think we have a really strong culture at Sporty. So we have over 40 people who've been with us 25 years or more. Some of them 30, 40 years. So we have we like to say we're kind of a family company without actually having any family, so there's no family drama.
Yeah.
But we have a really great team that we've been together for a long time. And part of that is we do kind of view what we do as stewardship. Sporty's been around over 60 years, and we want to keep it around another 60 years. And so you do have to take a little bit of that stewardship mentality. That doesn't mean you're stuck in the past. That means you need to evolve and change and improve. But we like to have sort of constant, slow improvement, so that we're never going too crazy one way, but we're also never standing still.
Yeah.
And a great way, again, is just to be close to your customers. So if we go to Oshkosh or Sun and Fun, I'm working in the tent just like everybody else here, talking to customers face to face. We're probably going to fly there in a GA airplane if we can, so we can fly into Oshkosh like they do. It's just really important, I think, we view ourselves as our customer in a lot of ways. We make products that we would like, and sometimes people will tell you that's bad advice, but I think in this case it's good advice, because we're passionate GA pilots, and so that's really important. Pilots like to talk, and so if you'll just have an open ear, you'll usually get pretty good feedback when we slip up. So
brilliant. Yeah, I've always found in business that being close to the customer is the only thing that really kind of keeps you going in the end. And anytime you drift a little bit too far, you sort of, if you trace the root of your problems, it's usually because you've not been spending enough time with the customers. And something I used to always find when we were having a really tough week or whatever in business and things were going wrong, just going and spending an afternoon going out and speaking to customers or talking about the future with customers or their problems and that sort of thing, it kind of made it all go away, which I'm sure you guys find that too.
I agree 100%. One of my favorite things to do is just go spend an afternoon with our customer service team and listen to them answer calls and work on emails, and because it really does get you close to the customer. And I never fail to walk out of one of those sessions with 9 new ideas, sometimes to the chagrin of other people I work with here, but it is just great. The cure for most of your problems is more time with the customer who's using your product.
Absolutely. Now, Sporties has been around since the 60s. It's probably going to go through a lot of change. It's probably been through an enormous amount of evolution and change since then, and it's going to go through a lot more. What sort of keeps you up at night when you think of the future of general aviation? Is it like regulation, costs, or something totally separate?
It's all of those things. I mean, certainly anybody who's been around the aviation industry a while, there's plenty of things to worry about. We've had a great run the last 7-8 years. I think a new generation of people getting into aviation, some of that driven by the airline pilot hiring boom, but not all of it. But I think certainly for all the strength there's some concerns. Unleaded avgas is not going away. We're all tired of talking about it. It's been a problem for 20 years. And, there's lots of smart people working on it. It's not an easy answer. Anybody who thinks that that's just an easy problem and the only reason it hasn't been solved is because of, I don't know, some conspiracy or something, they haven't looked at enough. It's a really, really tough problem. And so that one certainly is one that I think about a lot. I think until recently we did have a very aging demographic in aviation, and so I worried kind of what was the next generation of people who were going to be flying airplanes cross country. I feel a little better about that now than I did 10 years ago, because I do think there's some new energy in aviation, and there's everything from the boom in backcountry flying and tail draggers to a lot of exciting stuff with people using, Cirrus aircraft for real transportation to support businesses, single engine turboprops, the TBMs, Meridians, PC-12s of the world out there. I do think there's some good energy there. So that makes me hopeful. But certainly aviation's intimidating. And that's probably the biggest thing as an overarching topic to me is it's pretty hard to wake up one day and decide, I think I'm going to learn to fly an airplane, and then go out to your local airport and drive past the fences and everything and walk in and say, I want to learn to fly. I think it's easy if you've been in aviation for a while, it's easy to forget how hard that is and how intimidating we can make it feel. And so I think as an industry, we need to just continually keep reaching out and telling people, yes, you can learn to fly. And people do it every day. And it may not be as hard or even as expensive as you might think. Not that it's easy or cheap, but sometimes we have people come in and assume it's going to take, 5 years and $500,000. And we say, well, I have great news for you. Not, do we have a deal for you today? But I think that's really important in aviation, is just to continue to welcome the next generation in. And sometimes that means planting a seed that may not sprout for years. But, take your friend, your colleague, your neighbor for a flight. If your friend's teenage kid wants to go up for a flight, take him up for a flight. You never know. I think that's really, really important.
I feel like we definitely don't make it easy to get started, and we don't even make it easy to kind of like continue a lot of the stuff along the way. Like aircraft ownership is very challenging. Constant work, that sort of thing. Are you guys working on things that will expand the market, will make it a little bit more approachable for newcomers or people who maybe want to kind of test the waters? Is that something that Sporty's thinking about?
For sure. We've been longtime supporters of the industry, and we think about this a lot. So, I mean, we as on the very beginning end, we've worked with EA's Young Eagles program for almost 20 years now. To really give a great nationwide option where youth can get a free flight in an airplane, but beyond that, have a full roadmap. So if they take that flight and they love it, the question was always, what's next? And so for us, that was something we worked on for many years with EA to build that pathway. So that includes getting one of our Learn to Fly courses 100% free. It's the same course that thousands and thousands of people train with. There are scholarships there that can pay for your written test, your first flight lesson. There are all kinds of opportunities. So that's part of it. That's that planting the seed, working with young people. We've worked with AOPA for many, many years. They've done a lot of good work on the beginning end. They have a high school program that I think is really starting to see some results to get high school aviation programs in place across the country. But also things like rusty pilots, getting pilots who maybe learned to fly 20 years ago and haven't flown in a while, getting them back in, getting flying clubs started.
Yeah.
Those are all really, really important projects. And then just the simple stuff at Sporty's, we like to, you mentioned all the content we produce. We like to produce lots of free content, whether it's YouTube or podcasts or on our Flight Training Central online magazine, to give people a connection point where they feel like they can dip their toe in the water. They can start to get educated about what this might be, because there's no greater reward than learning to fly, but somebody's got to light the spark.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that same vein, we talk to a lot of business people who are thinking about flying because they can see it as a tool for their business, or they have a friend who already does that. And you just mentioned before that, big influx of people using Cirrus aircraft to do just that. What sort of advice would you have for newcomers that are entrepreneurs or business people that want to start doing what you do and fly to see their customers and spend more time face to face, and they're thinking of how aviation could be part of that?
I think it's a great thing to do, and I think more entrepreneurs should do it. So I'm incredibly high on it. However, you have to approach it the right way. Flying, especially flying a high-performance airplane for cross-country transportation, this is serious business. It is not like going out on a boat on the weekend. It's not something you can do 4 times a year. It really does need to be part of your lifestyle. The commitment to training, proficiency, being serious about it, it really does need to be a central part of your lifestyle. So anytime I'm talking to somebody in that situation, I talk to them a fair amount, I always encourage them, because I think the aviation industry is better set up to support those flying entrepreneurs than maybe ever before. But you really do have to commit to it and be serious about it. I think that it's probably going to take longer to learn to fly than you think, especially if you're a busy business owner. It's probably going to take longer to step up to that airplane that can really take you the long distances you might want. It's probably going to take more work. Most successful business people, we're not great at being students, and we're not great at failing. We're kind of used to being the smartest person in the room, and we like that feeling. And so to go learn to fly and add an instrument rating, it can be kind of humbling. And so I think if you go in with that philosophy that this is going to be a long-term thing and it's going to be hard work, and I'm going to embrace that challenge, it's going to make me a better person, I think it's incredibly rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding things you can do these days. So many things have gotten easy in modern life. Flying has not. Flying is still a challenge. And so if you embrace that, if you view that as a feature, not a bug, I think it's tremendous. The only people that worry me are the ones that think they're going to just go buy an airplane and add it to their business as if they're buying a new truck. And it's not that.
Yeah, we've definitely run into a number of those that kind of have that kind of mindset to it, and it's very hard to change that mindset to, as you say, more of a humble approach to it, saying like, I am a pure student here, I know nothing, I am not a master, and nor am I ever going to probably be able to fully master this, and it has to be a lifelong kind of change in lifestyle thing that they're going to do almost as part of the business. I even met someone just last week who he runs a big family business, and a couple of members of the family fly a lot of the employees around, and they have it as part of one of their objectives, their leadership objectives. Every quarter it has something to do with training, and it is getting more proficient in this sort of thing, or they are going to do X amount of proficiency training, and it's part of the business. And it's an amazing thing to hear that from someone. And they're flying 2 or 3 times a week at least in their business, and they have realized that the only way they can do that safely is make it a really big part of their life. So definitely hear that.
Yeah, and I think don't be afraid to ask for help. Again, sometimes you get in that entrepreneur mindset of I'm used to doing it myself, but aviation is a community. I think there's lots of mentors out there that even if it's not your primary flight instructor, there are more experienced pilots you can ask for advice. There's no shame in taking a second pilot along. I fly 2 pilot a lot because if nothing else, if it's a long day and I'm going to fly out in the morning, have a long meeting, fly home, I may be toast by the time I get back in the airplane at the end of the day. And to have another pilot and say, hey, maybe you take this leg, I'll work the radios for you. I think that's a tremendous safety tool. It's just good for your mental health. And I wish more people would embrace that, because it really does makes it a lot easier and safer.
Yeah, absolutely. I do the same thing, and only just recently 7 or 8 days ago, took my instructor with me on a flight for a business flight, and we took it as an opportunity to do a whole bunch of training and stuff along the way, and flying into an airspace I've never been into before. Man, does it take the pressure off and the stress, because you want to actually arrive and be able to be functional there instead of being a cortisol filled wreck basically by the time you get there. So definitely a proponent of that. In terms of your preparation for a flight, let's say you're going somewhere that's 700 or 800 miles away and you're getting into the PC-12, how do you sort of think of preparation for the flight and alternatives if the weather's not great, or you can't, there's a maintenance problem or something like that? Take me through your kind of mindset before you go and take a flight like that.
Yeah, I think it depends very much on the situation and what the trip is for, but I always like to communicate, especially if it's somebody I've worked with before or know, and I communicate, hey, I'm flying general aviation. We think it's going to happen, but set the expectation up front that it may not be 100%. So number one is just acknowledge that and have a backup plan. Maybe that means a last minute airline ticket. Maybe that means a reschedule. Maybe that means a Zoom call. There are different ways to handle that. But I always like to start looking at that, 3, 4, 5 days ahead of time, because it's easier to kind of start making plan B 4 days out than the night before. When I get up towards it, I like to really be in airplane mode, in pilot mode, and not businessman mode. So if it's an early morning flight, I'm going to be 100% flying focused. I'm not going to be thinking about the business. All my prep work needs to be done the day before, buttoned up. I need to be in pure pilot mode. And so I think about that an awful lot. I mean, the biggest thing I could say is just experience. I have had some cancellations or had to divert en route, and you're just convinced it's going to be the end of the world. And then it happens and you realize it's really not that big a deal.
Absolutely.
And so maybe there's no substitute for experience there. But I do like to give myself out. So as an example, if I've got especially a long trip and an early meeting, I'm going to get in the day before. Give myself a little bit of time on the front end of that and schedule around what's the key thing. So if I've got to be somewhere at 11 a.m., let's not arrive at 10:30. Or if I've got to be home at a certain time, well, let's give myself some flexibility there, because in general, it's rare that something's unflyable 5 days in a row. So if you give yourself a little flexibility, usually you can work it in there. And then just communicate, with whoever's on the other end. Communicate, and any good pilot, it's almost bred into us. You got to have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D. And so that's no different for the business side of things when you're planning a flight.
Absolutely. Where is your favorite destination, either business or pleasure, to fly to? What do you absolutely love when it comes up on the calendar?
I love a lot. I mean, I have a strange affection for Oshkosh, Wisconsin still. I've been going to the AirVenture fly-in since I was, 4 years old. So there's a strange part of me that loves going up there off season and feeling like I own the airport. There's about 20,000 airplanes. I would say, other than that, I really love the Southeast U.S. and even out in the Bahamas. So anytime I'm out there and looking at blue water, it's a wonderful thing.
Amazing. I guess on the Oshkosh side of things, sort of, if you could have a beer or a coffee with any historical aviator, who would it be and what would you ask them about?
Oh, boy. There are so many. I mean, probably... So I love Wind, Sand, and Stars by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, great French writer from the 20th century. And
he's on the back of my watch.
You read that book and the stuff he did flying in South America and North Africa. I mean, I would just sit down and say, talk. I have nothing to add to this. I just want to hear everything that comes out of your mouth. So he would be high on my list.
How good. I feel like it's probably a story that not a lot of people have delved into, but some fascinating stuff and some amazing, in Australia we call them bush mechanics, but just hearing about maintenance issues and how they solve the problems in the middle of nowhere with a coconut skin or like all sorts of weird stuff. I'm like, oh, can you imagine how the FAA would think of that today?
Unbelievable. The airplane really was the enemy back in those days. I mean, as much as it was the weather or anything else, just the reliability was almost zero. So it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into some more sort of fun stuff or different kind of topics. What's your favorite aircraft to fly and why would that be?
I'm not too picky, but I do love the PC-12 because every airplane is a trade-off. There is no perfect airplane. There's only the perfect airplane for the mission.
Yeah.
But the PC-12 does a lot. It can haul. I've hauled 7-8 people and lots of stuff. I've done 1,500 nautical mile trips. I've taken off out of short strips. I've gone to 27,000 feet. It can just do so much.
Yeah.
It's not much of a trade-off in general. So my example is always the approach speed at lightweight in that airplane is actually less than a Cirrus SR-22. You can cross the numbers at less than 80 knots if you're flying it right on angle of attack.
Yeah.
Which is pretty slow for a 10,000-pound airplane.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can go to flight level 270 and cruise along at 300 knots and go 1,000 miles. And there's just not many airplanes that have that combination of performance.
Absolutely. Well, you'll be definitely the envy of most of our audience, because when we've done surveys and usually at the end ask what your dream plane is, most of the time it's the PC-12. It's where everyone seems to want to ultimately get to in their sort of flying journey. I think probably because of most of the things you just suggested.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd say is it's surprisingly easy to fly. I mean, it's a pressurized turboprop. You got to learn your systems, and I don't mean to suggest you can step into it with 50 hours, but for as big and capable as it is, there's one power lever. There's not even a propeller lever, and so it's basically go fast, go slow. You can fly it, as I said, in the pattern. It flies slow or fast. So my favorite thing is going into a big airport. They can say, how fast can you give me? I can say, well, I can fly 210 knots here, and then you need 110 knots on short final. I can give you that. So it is a fairly forgiving airplane given the size and performance.
It's amazing. If aliens landed here tomorrow and you were the one sent to them to explain why we fly planes for fun, what would you tell them?
I think I'd say that mankind has an innate desire for freedom. We just sort of love to be out on our own, in control of our own fate, and there is no freedom quite like being at the controls of an airplane, soaring above it all, looking down on the earth. So I think it taps into some real caveman brain part of us somehow.
Yeah, very, very true. Well, on a more serious one, I guess, you wake up tomorrow and you're in charge of the FAA. You've just got the new job. What's your first rule or regulation that you might go after, or even a cultural change at the FAA?
Yeah, a lot. And I don't mean to minimize it. It's hard. It's harder than most of us want to give them credit for. Yeah. Their primary job is safety, and they've done an amazing job. We have the safest transportation system ever in the history of the world. I think what I would focus on, this may be a little niche, but I see this a lot, is I would find some way to standardize and simplify the local Flight Standards District Office setup out there. I always like to say the F in FAA stands for federal, which suggests we would have, one nationwide standard. And the S in FSDO stands for standards. And so, but you sometimes see that from FSDO to FSDO, the rules are interpreted quite differently, which just adds to all kinds of complexity. I think it reduces innovation. It drives up cost. So I really would love to see a retooling of how, I think we need local FAA offices, but what those look like, how those operate, get them more standardized, get more people who are really in those offices flying every day and close to the customer like we've been talking about. I think that would have tremendous trickle-down benefits for aviation.
Brilliant. I love that. In sort of parting words, where should people find you? How would they digest more of your content, buy your stuff, buy something like this sign that I bought from you guys a while ago? Where should they go?
Yeah, sporties.com is the place to start. That has our all of our products. Also has links to a lot of our content, so you can find Pilot's Discretion there. We also do a number of blogs. Like I said, Airfax is a great online magazine we do. It was a print magazine in the 1930s we brought back about 15 years ago, so I write for that as well. So a lot of good places you can plug into the Sporties universe. And just, like I said, we're trying to have fun with airplanes, and I think that's what most of our customers are. So if you see me at an air show or something like that, come say hi.
Wonderful. Well, I definitely recommend everyone to jump onto sporties.com, download the Pilot's Discretion podcast. There's a host of amazing episodes there from various people in the industry and just general pilots as well. But John, I want to say a big thank you for today. It's been awesome. I feel like I could keep talking to you for hours, but I'm sure everyone's going to get a lot out of this episode, so thank you.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Cheers. Hey, thanks for flying with us today. If you're getting value from these conversations with other pilot entrepreneurs and executives, do me a really quick favor. Hit that subscribe button or the follow button, depending on what app you're using, so you'll never miss another episode. And if you've got an extra minute and you loved us, drop us a 5-star review. Those reviews help other aviation-minded business folk find us, and honestly, they really just make my day. What about you? Have you got a story about using your plane to grow your business, or maybe someone you know? Well, shoot me a message on X at Simon G. Turner or at the Chief Executive Aviator podcast, or pop me an email, simon@turneraircraft.com. See you on the next Chief Executive Aviator.